Department of Veterans Affairs, Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships, and the Department of Veterans Affairs, Veterans Health Administration, Office of Communications. My name is Nicholas Walters, and I am one of the outreach specialists, and I will be your moderator this afternoon. Everyone's mic has been muted. If you have any questions during the presentation today, please make a note of it and type your question in the Q&A box to the right of the screen. Presentation, I will read the questions aloud and the presenter will provide the appropriate response. Before I get started, I would like to introduce Mr. Conrad Washington, the Director for the VA Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships. Conrad Washington serves as the Director here at VA Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships, CFB&P. Mr. Washington retired with the United States Marine Corps and 20 years of active duty service. Tour in 2004 and is a licensed minister actively serving his faith. He received his master's degree of divinity and pastoral studies from Moody Theological Seminary. He also has a master's in business administration, a bachelor's of science degree in education. Additionally, he is a graduate of the VA's class of 2017 Virtual Aspiring Leaders Program. Now I'll introduce Mr. Washington.
Thank you, Nicholas. I appreciate it. I see that we have a lot of folks on today. We thank you all for joining us. And I see that Misty Bruce joined us as well. So Nicholas, please introduce her when I'm done as well. But thank you again for joining us. A lot of things going on in the world today. And we acknowledge that this is Lent season. I think Ramadan starts tomorrow. The month of March, we're celebrating Women's History Month along with Social Work Month as well. And then lastly, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention again that we're celebrating the National Vietnam War Veterans Day on March 29th. We thank all Vietnam veterans for their service to our country. And I'm glad you're here today. I also want to mention that as we know there is a lot of discontent across the nation on many levels. I want to talk a little bit about anti-Semitism across the nation as it's growing and is threatening the safety and security of Jewish people. This hate has surfaced so much that the President Biden established a working group to counter anti-Semitism and other forms of discrimination and bias. The hate is being exposed by extremist groups and individuals from online and in person, but we must be able to bring people together from all backgrounds, all faiths, all ethnicities in order to serve our veterans, their families, caregivers, and beneficiaries. That's why we are here. That's why we do our webinars, so that we can bring people together to connect to veteran services. So we thank you for joining us, and I'm looking forward to our presentation today by Jerry, and we're going to introduce him shortly. But today is about the PACT Act, and he's going to talk about it in depth, and I hope that you get information from it that's helpful to you and your family members and beneficiaries. So without further ado, thank you all very much and enjoy today's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Washington. Next, I would like to introduce the presenters and today's speakers. First, I would like to introduce Ms. Misty Bruce, the Executive Director of American Red Cross Central Maryland. Misty Bruce is a humanitarian with 25 plus years of experience in the nonprofit, for-profit, and government relation fields. Prior to her current role of Executive Director, Ms. Bruce has held several additional staff positions within the organization. However, her start with the American Red Cross truly began as a client turned volunteer in the early 1990s. She has been captivated by the mission ever since. In her role as the executive director, Ms. Bruce manages a portfolio of strategic relationships with local elected officials, community leaders, and stakeholders and board members to ensure that the delivery of the Red Cross mission is successful. I now present Ms. Bruce.
Hi, thank you so much for that lovely and warm introduction. I have to say that one of my favorite relationships is that with the Department of Veteran Affairs. I'm continued to be pleasantly surprised and humbled by the programs and the intentional outreach and modification of resources that the Department of Veteran Affairs continues to strive for as the needs of our veterans change and evolve over the years. And I think that's really what it's about. You know, when we're talking about reasons to celebrate different organizations and people this month, I think that veterans are a group of folks that we should celebrate every month. And not only does the Department of Veteran Affairs continue to be committed to doing just that by the resources they provide, but I would be remiss if I didn't say so does the American Red Cross. And through this partnership, the American Red Cross has really been able to fine tune some of the opportunities that we have for our veteran population to help support them on their journey, no matter what that journey may look like. And so I would encourage everyone on the call today, when you have a moment, you can go to redcross.org and take a look at some of the ways that the American Red Cross continues to help our nation's war wounded and support their families and the communities that take care of them. I would encourage you to give your time as a volunteer. We run a 24/7 operation in support of our veteran community, and we are the only entity congressionally chartered since 1905 to render those emergency services, communication services. Again, thank you to Mr. Conrad and the fine team here. I think you're making tremendous strides in ensuring that our veteran community and those who support them have the resources they need, and you're doing it in a way that just further strengthens and touches people everywhere.
Thank you, Ms. Bruce, and we appreciate your time in that introduction. Next, I would like to introduce Mr. Gerald Michel, the Executive Director of the Office of Communications, the Veterans Health Administration. Jerry Michaud was appointed the Executive Director of the Office of Communications in Veterans Health Administration on September 29th, 2019. He leads VHA's communications program activities, including media relations, digital services, and executive communications, with the aim of promoting the VHA brand and speaking with one voice. Mr. Michaud is an experienced strategic communications and marketing executive with expertise in public relations, advertising, branding, and graphic design. He assisted the Department of Veterans Affairs in standing up the Center for Acquisition Innovation and the Acquisition Academy, and he created a branding program for the VA Innovation Initiative. He also provided public relations and creative communication services for the Department of Defense America Supports Your campaign. At this time, I now turn the mic over to Mr. Michaud.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. I just want to let you know that I have a very strong affinity with, I'm on my video here, strong affinity with faith-based and neighborhood partnerships. I studied to be a Catholic priest for 8 years, lived in a monastery in Detroit, right in the city. So I was engaged day to day with all what's going on with the city, and also worked on hunger programs. I started a nonprofit out of that experience, and I have a master's in theology, so I'm very much into the nonprofit and faith-based experience. So I'm very thrilled to be with this group. You may have remembered Live Aid back in 1985. I was associate producer of that and worked with a lot of groups to change the public conversation about hunger. So that was kind of my basic background, but I've been working with VA since 2019. 3 months after I started, the pandemic hit. So completely changed. My whole plan got totally trashed, as everybody's probably pretty much did. So I was involved with having VA speak with one voice, with a clear, consistent, and confident message. And that was that got us through the pandemic, is being able to have that kind of consistent communication out to our veterans and to our healthcare workers. It was a big event for everybody in America, in the world, actually. It's a life-changing event. And we're still dealing with it. I'm sure people have post-traumatic syndrome from this as well. But what I do want to talk to you about is the PACT Act. And if you can go to the title slide. The PACT Act is the largest enhancement of eligibility for veterans since the GI Bill, where VA Veterans Health Administration got started. Could you switch to the next slide, or the first slide? I'm not seeing it on my screen. There we go. Okay, great. Okay, So let's do the next slide. I'll talk about the PACT Act. So the PACT Act, the official title is actually the Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson Promise to Address Comprehensive Toxics Act of 2022. So it's an expansion of healthcare. Heath Robinson was a National Guard veteran, Ohio National Guard veteran, served tours in Kosovo and Iraq with the 285th Area Support Medical Company after enlisting in 2003. He was named Non-Commissioned Officer of the Year in 2012 and again in 2013. But beginning in 2016, Sergeant First Class Robinson experienced symptoms that ultimately led to the diagnosis of a rare form of lung cancer that he believed to be associated with his exposure to burn pits while he was in service. Tragically, he succumbed to the cancer in May 2020 at the age of 39. His dying wish was for his family to continue their campaign for other veterans fighting illnesses related to toxic exposures. Only a month later, the bill would bear his name was introduced to Congress. It stuck there for a while, and through the work of a lot of powerful advocates for nonprofit organizations advocating for veterans, celebrities like Jon Stewart, this bill actually got passed, and it's a huge, huge bill. I want to talk to you a little about some of the elements. So the big points are that it expands and extends eligibility for VA healthcare for veterans with toxic exposures and veterans of the Vietnam era, the Gulf War era, and the post 9/11 era. And expands eligibility for benefits for veterans exposed to toxic substances. Those who are Vietnam era veterans will remember some of the experience of coming home and not being totally accepted, considered to be kind of baby killers or burning a village people. And through the American Supports Program and with the Persian Gulf War, we actually helped to shift that conversation to be how America supports the troops. And you saw a big change, a shift change in how America relates to military and veterans, flyovers at stadiums, the big unfurling of the flags at before games, national anthems, all that change has happened quite a bit. I remember one of the first things we did with the America Supports You campaign was we had a commercial during the Super Bowl. It was one commercial shown one time, and it was a real live action video of troops getting off a plane and walking through an airport. And people started applauding, and we got shots of people wondering, what's all that noise? Why are people applauding? And it was the troops coming off the plane, coming home. And it was the first time that it was a company, Anheuser-Busch, supported this Support the Troops initiative. And that was the first time we changed the conversation. So I was very proud of that thing happening, and the fact that we could shift our approach to how we treat veterans, because this is like a very strong footnote to that. That right now there's, and I'll talk about this later, there's a huge expansion of healthcare eligibility for Vietnam veterans exposed to Agent Orange and other toxic exposures, which weren't available before. Next slide, please. There's a lot of key components. I'll just read these because it's very hard to read. Expands and extends eligibility for VA healthcare for veterans with toxic exposures. They'll improve the decision-making process for determining what medical conditions will be considered for presumptive status. Presumptive means that we're assuming, because you have this disease, it was caused by a toxic exposure during the military. So you don't have to prove anything. You don't have to prove where you were, what time you were there. If you have these conditions, you're eligible for VA healthcare. Every enrolled veteran will receive an initial toxic exposure screening. We're at about 2.5 million veterans have already done this since October. So it's just part of your medical treatment, your visit to a provider. There's a series of questions that are asked, and you're determined if you were exposed to toxic environmental situations, toxic burn pits, chemicals, radiation, any of those kind of things are questions that we asked, where you were and how it has affected you. And about 40% of the veterans who have who've had this exposure screening, we found that there is a reason for them to get further testing. So based on that exposure. So it's very effective. We're about, of the 6 million veterans who are enrolled in VA healthcare, we're almost up at half with just a few months. So we're very proud of that activity going on. There'll also be toxic exposure related education and training for VA healthcare and claims processors. And there'll be a lot of research being done, and we're adding a whole lot of new employees. There's a real hiring spree going on with a lot of incentives to make sure we have enough healthcare providers to care for the new veterans coming in who are receiving information about outreach and are going to be able to be treated with VA healthcare. And we're building also some new facilities across the country, providing greater access to VA healthcare. Next slide, please. So next slide. Nicholas, are you running the slides or somebody?
I am, sir. They are progressing.
They are progressing.
Yes, sir.
There we go. Thank you. It's back to the first one, I think. I think the one just before this. Sure.
There seems to be a lag in
Yeah, I see.
the communication.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'm in charge of communications, so that's not a good thing. That's good. Okay, we'll stay with this. I've expanded and extended eligibility is what I see. Is that what everybody sees? Great. Okay, good. So the first big point, and I'm in charge of outreach for this campaign. This is not only is this the largest expansion of eligibility for veterans since the GI Bill, which is 1946. This is also the largest outreach campaign we've ever done in VA. So we're going to be using both owned media, which are like our VA websites, our blogs, our emails, our social media, but also we're going to be using earned media, which is that we're going to find stories that we can highlight for the media to cover on their own about how veterans have been affected and have been, their care has been improved or they have new access to healthcare. And also paid media. We're doing we had a billboard on Times Square for over the holidays, so that during New Year's Eve, when Ryan Seacrest is saying, here's the clock, the ball coming down, we had a billboard on New Year's Eve in Times Square talking about this. We have ads going on all around the country. We're doing a lot of digital communication, a lot of social media, paid social media work. We're kind of pulling out all the stops to really get the message out that veterans now have new access and new eligibility to healthcare if they've been exposed to these toxic exposures. So this is reaching out specifically to veterans of the Vietnam era, the Gulf War era, and post 9/11 era, which is the vast majority of veterans. We don't have any World War I veterans alive. World War II, there's a small group of them, smaller group. And most of those are already enrolled in healthcare. We have very low non-VA healthcare in that World War II group. Vietnam, we're trying to do more expansion. We lost a lot of records about the Vietnam veterans when it was, but the records were burned in a warehouse. So we're trying to recreate those records, working with the Department of Defense and state departments of Veterans Affairs to be able to recreate who these people are and how we can reach out to them. So there's parts of the PACT Act, which is eligibility for certain groups of veterans. It's very complicated. We're trying to get it less complicated with some new changes we're going to be making. So it's easier to understand for veterans and also easier for VA to understand if the veterans are eligible. Next slide, please. Okay, this is for, so veterans who served, this is the Vietnam veterans. So veterans who served in the Republic of Vietnam, Thailand, Laos, previously it was only for Vietnam veterans. These are other places that weren't specifically within the Vietnam War, but they are also able to apply for 2 Agent Orange presumptive conditions. Again, presumptives are, we assume you have this because of your exposure during the military. For these groups of people, they're eligible for health care now. You turn that back to August 10th, the day the bill was signed. So Vietnam veterans can apply right now. So please do that if you're a Vietnam veteran or know someone, or ever come in contact with a Vietnam veteran, have them sign up if they're not enrolled in healthcare yet. Also, if they are currently enrolled in healthcare, their priority group gets advanced to a higher rank. So they have less copay, they have better access to healthcare. Also, there's a special enrollment period. So if you're a post 9/11 veteran who you were separated or discharged between September 11th, 2001 and October 1st, 2013, you have a 1-year period where usually it's like after you get discharged, you usually have 5 years to enroll in VA. Now you have a 1 year. All of those military persons during that time who were discharged or separated during that period of September 11, 2001 and October 1, 2003 can be eligible within this 1 year period, October 1st to October 1st, 2023. So there's like 6 months left of that period. No costs, and care is free as well. So that's sort of a message we're pushing out very, very hard, very, very strongly about this limited time period for this cadre of veterans. Next slide, please. I talked about the toxic exposure screening. It's a quick series of questions, and it lets us know about their connection to service areas and how we can help them, get better care. We started that October 1st, and as of last week, we completed almost 2.5 million veterans being screened. So that's been something that's been kind of lets us forecast of what kind of service and what kind of care we have to provide in the future. So that's, if you do know a veteran or are a veteran, make sure you get your toxic exposure screening the next time you talk to your provider. Next slide. These are some of the presumptive conditions. These are ones that are already outlined in the legislation, that if you have any of these conditions and you're a veteran, we're going to presume you got those through your services. So there's not a question about how did you get exposed. We're assuming you got exposed while you're in the military. So and your service connected, any of these diseases, we assume it. So I'm sure there's going to be materials available for listing all these, or you can also go to our website, which I'll tell you about later, that has this information. And also the barcode is something you can just click on. Next slide. Filing claims. So veterans can file a claim for their case. If you've never filed for presumptive condition, you can do that now. And any other claims, we've greatly expanded our claims service representatives. So we got a lot more people available to help people get their claims handled. So it's just an important part of this piece. We got new funding from Congress to hire more people for this, both for helping veterans file claims, also we're doing a lot of claims clinics around the country, where we're going to various locations around the country and saying, come here to this location, we'll expedite your claims and make sure you get covered. Next slide. So the Gulf era and post 9/11 eligibility, it kind of outlined more of the combat areas. If you're on or after August 2nd, 1990, if you're in any of these locations on the left, or after 9/11, any of those locations on the right. I don't see Iraq. Weird. Okay, but it should be. Yeah, that's kind of odd. So that's the areas for eligibility. And there's also another section called Section 103 that is a broader expansion. So it's not just combat areas like these locations, but also if you were behind the lines, if you were doing support work, or if you were in training or whatever it was, that you may have been exposed to toxic exposures. So you'll be eligible for that as well. Next slide. And also some of these weren't eligible before, but this is radiation in some of these areas that were exposed to various radiation experiences. So this expands our coverage as well. And next slide. Also, other affected veterans and survivors. We have a lot of posters and materials and information that addressed down at the bottom of the slide called VA.gov/PACT. Go there, you have your answers for everything. So that's probably the best place to go. Also, you can call 1-800-MY-VA-411, and we have operators ready to help you with all of those requirements. Next slide. You've probably seen a lot of ads about Camp Lejeune and other toxic exposures there about the water. We can't compete with those ads. There's about $1 billion worth of ads being put out there by the law firms telling you that we can help you get your claim. You don't need it. VA does that for free. So, and you're not charging the Marine Corps. This is the government is paying for this. So any consideration about that, make sure you click on some of these links, get more information. And the next slide will also give you some suggestions about how to, that's coming through, Walter, or Nicholas, I'm sorry. Yeah, the PACT Act scams. So if you get called or by a law firm or a company hired by law firms to get you to enroll with them, they charge a lot for a claim that you can get for free if you go directly to VA. So we're just encouraging, we have a lot of links here. We're encouraging veterans to not do that and just work with your local veteran service organizations. Those include American Legion, VFW, Disabled American Veterans, Paralyzed Veterans of America, all those groups that work with veterans to help them get their claims. That's how you do it. Not going through a law firm that is just going to charge you a lot of money to do something you can do for free. Okay, let's go to the next slide. That's probably it. Oh, and if you've been previously denied toxic exposure, please file a claim again. If you have not been accepted for enrollment, try to enroll again. We've been able to open a lot of doors, and we're welcoming veterans in any door they come through. So you can go through the website at va.gov/PACT, go to a vet center, enroll, go to a facility and enroll, or call 1-800-MY-VA-411 to enroll. We're putting out all our welcome mats everywhere we can. We're real excited about this opportunity to expand coverage. You know, when in the past, when veterans have been denied benefits, we're not doing that. Congress tells us what we can do. We're following Congress's lead. And thankfully, they've listened to advocates, they've listened to the public, listened to veterans and us, and they have expanded this opportunity tremendously. So that's really great. I think that's the last slide. Yeah. So open for any discussions, questions.
Thank you for that presentation, Mr. Michaud. Now, we have a few questions in the Q&A box that I would like to get your input on. And the first question comes from Lynn. And the question is, does this cover Cold War veterans between Vietnam and Gulf War? I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, it doesn't. It only starts, the best case is going to be someone who was discharged after 1990. I think it's August 1st, 1990. So from Vietnam till there, because there wasn't a lot of combat situations there, they just wasn't included. We don't know quite how many veterans that includes, but there's not a lot of mobilization of veterans at that time. But yeah, that is a donut hole that we are very aware of, and working on changing that. It's a great question, Lynn.
The next question comes from Gay Hollowell. Is a VA presenter available to speak in Naples, Florida to veterans regarding the PACT Act?
Yes, wherever there's a VA facility or a vet center, there are people who will be available for that. So if you send me the information of where and when, we'll get that information out to the facilities who are trained and briefed. I would say about 95% of all our VA employees have gone through a very intensive training about the PACT Act. It's that important to us. So they will not only know about it themselves, but also be prepared to communicate about it. So we will definitely get someone from the Public Affairs Office or some other communicator or executive from that area to do that in Naples. And yeah, we also have we're doing clinics around the country. I don't know if we have one scheduled in that area, but we're doing a lot more. So we're in it for the long run. So we're going to continue to do this for the next several years of really reaching out to veterans. We're also doing a lot of direct mail out to veterans, letting them know about the opportunity. And so there'll be a lot of communication. So yeah, send any events or opportunities you have to me. And I'll be glad. This Gerald.Michel at VA.gov, and I'll be glad to forward those to the local facilities to manage.
The next question comes from Paul Hudson. Does the PACT Act have a registry where veterans can receive monies for burn pit exposures, similar to Agent Orange registry where Vietnam veterans received payouts?
There would be disability claims. That would be a claim that you would be making with the Veteran Benefit Administration. But yes, so that's also available through the this website at the bottom of the screen, va.gov/PACT. So I don't know if you would qualify specifically, but that is available. So you can check it out for sure.
The next question comes from Robin Dillard. What about those who have been stationed in these areas prior to these dates?
Yeah, that was similar to that question about the Cold War veteran. It's not complete. It's not as complete as we want it to be, and so I would say if you're in those eras, if you're served in those times, sorry, I got a dog scratching the door. If you served in those times, to still contact VA, find out what your eligibility is. So because the eligibility numbers are changing, we're trying to look at, I mean, to me, I don't know why we don't allow every veteran in every era at all times to be available, but Congress sets the rules. So, but we're finding some difference, finding some ways to get more veterans engaged and enrolled. So I would say call and check it out, see what's available.
The next question comes from Carla. Will VHA be moving to ensure veterans living with pulmonary disease to have much needed access to respiratory therapists as part of their outpatient care teams?
I don't quite know the answer to that. About how we're doing it. I'm a communications guy, I'm not a medical guy, so I don't really know what we're going to be doing specifically for that. But I know that we've had our highest hiring surge ever in the last 3 months. So we're getting more and more staff on board. We're getting more and more capabilities. We've been heavily funded by Congress, by you, to do this, and so I think you'll see a lot more changes available for that. I don't know specifically about that case.
The next question comes from Daryl. Is there a schedule for visits for clinics around the U.S. and in Alaska in particular?
Yes, there's a schedule. If you go to, let me give you another web address. It's called news.va.gov. That's our website. It's our blogs. And we're putting all of our clinics, all of our enrollment, all the screenings we're doing, we're listing those on blogs. So if you go to that page, you'll see a number of articles about upcoming events going on. We also have an upcoming events calendar on va.gov, which will let you know what's happening. Also, if you're in Alaska, you could call the local VA facility and say, what do you have? And they'll let you know what's going on there.
The next question comes from Thomas. I do not get my health care from the VA, but a private commercial facility. Will I have will I have the will I have to go to a VA facility to apply?
For toxic screening? Is that what the question was? Sorry, I didn't hear the end of that.
I assume so.
Yeah, I assume so too. Yes, you have to be an enrolled veteran to get the toxic screening. So enrollment doesn't cost anything. It's just go to VA.gov/PACT, get enrolled, and we'll set you up for a toxic screening appointment.
The next question comes from Nancy. How many people have been screened so far?
To about 2.5 million veterans. Since October 1st, this last October.
Well, Mr. Michaud, that seems like it's the end of the questions, and I would like to thank you again for your time this afternoon and addressing all of the questions and being a speaker. Also, I would also like to thank Miss Misty Bruce again. And now I will turn the mic over to Conrad Washington for closing remarks.
Thank you, Nicholas. Hey, thanks, Jerry. Appreciate you joining us today. As always, very, very informative. And I know that by the number of questions we had and the number of folks that we had on the line here, people are interested. So thank you again for all that you do here in the VAs as a colleague of ours. And thank you all for joining us today. And we look forward to future webinars with you. So please tune into our website and look for more opportunities. Thank you all and have a blessed day.